Fellow Falcoholics, welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm Kevin, Knight and Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host, he is Tre'Shon Diaz at Trey3Sean on the Twitters, at Tre'Shon on the Blue Skies. I'm also at Falcoholic Kevin on the Blue Skies. I think it's just Blue Sky. I don't think it's plural, but you know, I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. You know, I haven't gotten the read down for that yet, but we are here for another episode of Tuesday Takes after a disastrous performance on Sunday by the Falcons. This game, it raised so many concerns about the future of this particular Falcons team because of the nature of the problems. We actually, I think, came out of this bye, saw some good things. That it looked like the team was back. You know, they didn't look like Denver, where everyone was kind of just like, I don't know if we really want to be here. The defense played their asses off. I mean, they did make some tweaks that I think paid dividends against this Chargers offense, which not the most talented, but they do have a great quarterback and they do have some good options to throw the ball to. And the Falcons defense delivered a very good game, didn't allow a touchdown. Unfortunately, the Falcons offense allowed a touchdown, and that's maybe just one of the many problems with the offense. But when I say offense, I mean quarterback, because it's official after the last 3 games. The Falcons do have a quarterback problem with Kirk Cousins. And Tre'Shon, I know you spent a better part of Monday getting into the All-22. That was a hazmat suit adventure watching some of that stuff. But before we dive into that, how you doing prior to this recording? We can do it before and after. Yeah.
Yeah. Try to normally keep it a little positive, but not doing too well. Because I think, like you said, it's clear we saw a lot of things change, but there's been one constant issue for the Falcons in these past 3 games, and it was magnified in this one, and that was the quarterback play. It's just not looking good, and that just kind of spells disaster for the vibes.
Yeah, it's, you know, I know a lot of people think the takes on Cousins are very reactionary, but you know, I think it's hard to be reactionary going into week 14. Like, we've seen 13 or 12 games now of Kirk Cousins. That's a very good body of work. This isn't like week 1 where we were like, wow, this is really concerning, but it's week 1. Like, you know, there's a lot of football left. We've seen 12 games. There's only 5 left. Like, there, you know, what we've seen is enough to make a determination, and have long-term concerns. And while Kirk has obviously had some fantastic games, the Bucs games in particular come to mind. The Cowboys game is another one. The Panthers game, to an extent, was also pretty good. He's had a lot of bad games as well, and it's pretty obvious that when the defensive quality increases, that Cousins' play dramatically decreases. And that's obviously the difference this season, is the Falcons just haven't been able to play the 32nd ranked defense every week. If they did, Kirk Cousins would probably be in the MVP conversation. But unfortunately, in the NFL, you do have to play good to great defenses, and that's been a rough ride for Kirk this season. And this game, I think, magnified a lot of those issues. But, you know, in part, and it's one of the things we'll get into, is like, you know, the quality of the defense matters. But in this game, like, the defense didn't really have to do a whole lot. Kirk just kind of gave the game to them. And I'm not sure that it would have been that much different if he had played the Bucs again, for example. The Bucs are capable of catching the interceptions that he threw in this game. So, very concerning game, Tre'Shon, to say the least.
Yeah, it was. And, you know, I think, like you said, what I think is disappointing is that this was a good test in terms of defense. And I thought Zach Robinson had a good plan. We'll get into the details later, but when you look at how the numbers shook out at the end of the day, there's no reason the Falcons shouldn't have kind of won that one handedly, given the performance of the defense and the rest of the team.
Yeah. There's a lot to get into on this one, and I know there's a lot of takes out there on Cousins, on Z-Rob, on Kyle Pitts. Continues to be public enemy number 1. You know, I think we'll have some thoughts on Raheem Morris and his his comments on the situation, which are important too. We'll be getting into all that here in just a moment. Real quick, though, guys, want to bring you word from our sponsor. Once again, Bet Online. Folks, Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch and bet on the games as they're happening. I'm officially steering clear of any Falcons bets at this point because, 4 picks, that's maybe smash the under, or maybe that's the only thing you could take away from this so far. But the Falcons defense actually played a decent game, and Kirk Cousins threw 4 picks. So not going to touch this team, but you can, or you can touch other bets because BetOnline's got the largest selection of odds on everything from college football to the NFL to the NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, MMA, boxing, all that stuff. They've got it at BetOnline. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head to that website today. It's betonline.ag. And don't forget to use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, Tre'Shon. This, I've watched a lot of bad Falcons games on all 22, and this was one of the hardest, just the most rage-inducing, which is not a healthy way to watch all 22. But, I admit, I am an emotional person, and this is why it's challenging sometimes to try to analyze a team you're a fan of because the emotions run high, as anyone who follows my Twitter account can attest. But, I mean, in this case, it was like I was almost angrier after watching the All-22 than live, which is usually that's not the case. Usually you look and you're like, okay, maybe he wasn't as open as I thought, or, the corner just made a really good play, or, somebody got tripped, or no, it was like there were no good answers for any of Kirk Cousins' 4 interceptions, notwithstanding the litany of other throws that were just not close. And just, I mean, it was rough. It was rough is the one, sentence takeaway.
Yeah, it was rough. And like you said, when you go back and look at that film, it really just comes down to the quarterback not being able to execute. And that definitely makes it a much more frustrating watch because, you can understand if guys aren't open, if there's certain things that are happening like pressure or other stuff like that in terms of execution that's affecting the QB play. But like, by and large, this one fell on Kirk Cousins' shoulders, and he's the reason that the Falcons are now 6-6, because that's a game again that they should have won based off of the performance of everybody else. It's inexplicable to think that the Falcons had 5 sacks, held Justin Herbert to 0 touchdowns, held the Chargers offense to 0 touchdowns. You have another great special teams play. Falcons are now 0-3 on fake punts. Please keep running them. We love it. Please do it. Like, call some more. Keep watching the film of how bad other teams are at trying to get it to work, and just keep it coming. And you still lose. You outplay them completely on one side of the ball, but your quarterback lets you down. And it's just frustrating because it's the 3rd game in a row where Kirk Cousins doesn't have a touchdown, but he does have turnovers. We're having multiple turnovers in a single game now. We're seeing these bad habits, these bad plays are starting to they're a feature. It's not a bug. That it is a part of Kirk Cousins' game at this stage in his career.
Yeah. And, there's obviously, and this is a line that I think we say a lot in this program, it's never just one thing, right? There's always a number of things that contribute. But, to me, there's a lot of big problems with Kirk's game, and we can break them all down. But right now, I mean, everyone knows he can't move, right? That's one problem. That problem by itself can be schemed around. We've seen plenty of pocket passers that don't really have scrambling ability have a lot of success in the NFL, even in recent years. So you can scheme around that. So I really don't think the inability to move. Now, he's doing it at like an extreme level where like he can't even really like get off his spot at all. So that is like another level of immobility that is probably more problematic. But I don't think that's the biggest issue. So to me, the biggest issues are the arm strength. And that's been something that has popped up on film throughout the season. It did seem like it had gotten better for a while. He was able to put a little bit more on his throws. He was never delivering stuff like super fast. But he had some plays where I thought he delivered some lasers. I mean, some great throws.
Yeah.
Nothing like what we've seen Penix do in like 4 passing attempts, where he's just Penix has a special arm, so it's not really fair to compare there. But the arm strength is obviously a big concern, and then the decision making is the one that's kind of the most inexplicable, given that that's the one thing you would expect a guy like Kirk Cousins to be the most reliable in. I mean, so what do you think is the bigger concern at this point? Is it that decision making, or is it that lack of arm strength that we're starting to see?
Yeah, I think I think the comment around mobility is fair when you look at Kirk Cousins, because he's never been the most mobile guy. And we have seen that, I think, exacerbated this year. Like, obviously the mobility is even worse. But to just kind of table that for a second, to answer your question, I think it is the arm strength issue. And I think that is causing him to make worse decisions, because he is not confident in his arm strength right now. And I think the last play to Drake London before the interception on the final drive is probably one of the best examples of that. When I first watched that play, in my head, I felt like Kirk really isn't showing the ability to anticipate or throw to a spot anymore. And I thought he was a little late on that throw. And then Aaron Freeman pointed out that he thinks that it's the bigger issue on that play is arm strength. And after I went back and looked at it, I'd probably say I'd have to agree that that's definitely the primary issue, because if Kirk releases the ball at the same point on that play, it's getting there quicker if he actually has the ability to drive it in there. But he doesn't. And because he doesn't have the ability to drive it in there, he is seemingly late on a lot of throws. It seems like he's having to take another half second to process, or he's really just not trusting himself until he sees that the receiver is completely open. And that doesn't really work in the NFL for passes beyond 8 yards down the field. So much of those are anticipatory. You're looking for signs that a guy is going to be open, not him being completely open, because usually when guys are completely open, that gap is going to close. You're too late. The ball already needed to be out. And we're starting to see Cousins really struggle with those types of passes. And yesterday, 3 for 10, 3 interceptions when throwing the ball beyond 10 yards. Like, we're not even talking about deep shots. We're talking about 11, 12, 13-yard throws, and it looks like he can't get the ball there, and he just does not trust his ability to do so. And if you can't throw a 10-plus yard pass play, then you have to be able to be smart and make sound decisions. And sure, we can dink and dunk this thing down, but Kirk refused to do that yesterday. And we saw him lock in a lot of times. We saw him pick the most difficult route. The guys are covered up or just aren't really getting the best opportunity, because it's just not a smart decision. And so I think that we're really seeing all of these issues start to snowball and compound, and it's leading to these performances where he's throwing these awful looking interceptions, where he's staring guys down. Or that pick six is one of the saddest throws you'll see like all year. That thing had no velocity on it and no hope. I've seen people talk about the stutter step or something from Mooney there, and they're like, oh, well, Kirk thought he was gonna throw. No, look, man, Mooney's doing that stutter step because he sees that his route's already covered and that the defender up the field is covering that smash route. He's trying to entice the defenders to come down. Even if he does that, that route's covered. Safety's over the top. You just can't throw that ball. Like, there's no way you can throw that football. And like 2-3 plays before, on the 4th down out route to Mooney, where he does complete it, Mooney makes a fantastic hands catch. You see Cousins is late. That ball could have easily been a pick six. and then they go back to it again, and he just can't get it there.
Yeah, and that's the biggest concern is I mean, that the decision making and the arm strength, and I think you touched on what I was going to get at, which is like they go hand in hand. Like I think he is making very bad decisions, but he also doesn't have the arm strength to get the ball there anyway. Like sometimes you can get away with bad decisions if you can rifle that thing in there because you can just erase a mistake with that laser, right? It's like if I can throw this thing fast enough, the corner can't get there. Or if he does get there, he's going to get fingertips on it and maybe it's incomplete, but it's not really going to cost my team. With Kirk, it's like if you make a bad decision and then you lay that thing out there like he did multiple times, that's going to be picked by any defender worth their salt. Like I've never seen an easier pick six opportunity. That ball was so slow. I mean, it didn't have a chance in hell. I think first of all, it was short of Mooney. I'm not even sure if it would have made it to him. And second, like again, from the decision-making standpoint, like when you're looking to throw that, you're looking to see that corner basically take a few more steps back. Like if that corner's in the position he is when Kirk lets go of that ball, that's a sign that you don't throw that because you know that corner is just waiting to jump that route. Like he didn't bite on the threat of the deep pass. He's not, playing cover 3 or whatever where he's dropping and trying to cover the deep third. There's no window there for that ball. Like that corner is covering that route. So you have to move on to your next read at that point. That, if he's the key player, then the key is telling you not to throw that ball. Like that is not open. And he throws it anyway. He throws it late and he throws it with no velocity. Just so problematic. And then you mentioned it, like the worst play of the game is undoubtedly when Kirk escapes pressure, which is very rare, and then throws what looks like a touch pass like into the back of the end zone, into triple coverage. And no, like when he let go of that ball, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a touchdown. Someone must be wide open because he's throwing it so gently. It must be it must be just Kyle Pitts is standing in the back of the end zone or something like that."
Yeah.
No, it wasn't even close to that. There was nobody open, and there were 3 Chargers defenders just waiting. And one of them was like, "Wow, this is the easiest pick I've ever gotten in my life." Okay, we'll take that. I don't know if he thought he was throwing it out of the back of the end zone or what, but again, it's like that is inexcusable. Like you would bench a rookie for that mistake, like not much less a 15-year veteran quarterback. It's just those are the types of mistakes that like you can't ever make that mistake, especially at this point in your career. And like guys do make mistakes, don't get me wrong, but I mean it's a whole body of work issue at this point because we're starting to get to the stage with Kirk Cousins. And there's a lot more plays we could talk about, unfortunately, in this game. He's not really offering you anything. And it's one thing if he could be, like, I think all the Falcons need him to be at this point, like, especially against the Chargers, was we just need you to distribute this ball to whoever's coming open. And unfortunately, like, with the playmakers the Falcons have, like, a lot of times the guy that's coming open is one of the deep routes. Like we saw this a lot of times in this game. Someone was coming open deep. Kyle Pitts multiple times was coming open deep. We saw Drake London coming open on some stuff. We saw Darnell Mooney getting open. I think it's clear that Mooney is a little bit slowed at this point. Like I think he's probably like 90 to 95%. Yeah. He doesn't look 100%. He doesn't look like debilitated or that he can't play. It's just he's not as explosive as at full health. I think he's close and he's getting closer. But this team can't really threaten that. So all these routes that are coming open, teams don't really have to worry about the Falcons throwing that ball. And that's what the Chargers kind of figured out was that, oh, we could just sit on the run because Kirk can't get the ball more than 10 yards. Like this is really bad. So we're just going to sit on these short routes and we're going to stuff up the run as much as we can. And the Falcons didn't really have an answer because the passing game couldn't get going. So it's just, I don't know what he offers you now. If he's going to make decisions that poor and has almost no ability to get the ball downfield or even on a simple out route. Like, I mean, if you can't throw that 10-yard out, like you're not an NFL starter. Like I I don't know if I could throw that out with any more velocity than Kirk Cousins does. I don't have an NFL caliber arm or even a college or high school caliber arm, but like that looked like me trying to throw a 10-yard out, and at the Turkey Bowl, my uncle's probably not picking that off, but like, my uncle's not playing on the other side of the field in this game. So
get a fingertip on it.
Yeah, maybe. But
yeah,
very concerning.
It is concerning. And, like you and I talked about this, their first press conference back was about which side of the ball. What did Raheem want to address immediately? Offense. He talked about the penalties. Falcons only had 2 penalties for 10 yards, and both were on defense. So you're clean on the. All right, I think both of them are on the defense, right? They may have had one illegal formation, but I think both of them are on the defense. So offense is clean. You have one of your best days from a penalty perspective. And they talked about play action. And we talked about, what is Kirk offering? And this kind of goes back to the mobility point I was talking about earlier. They ran 7 play action plays. Kirk was 4 for 27 for 27 yards, 0 touchdowns, and an interception. And when you watch him, it's very clear why they haven't been running play action. And it's because Kirk is stiff. It's because the mobility has been limited enough that the only kind of play action drops Kirk Cousins can manage right now are just vertical drops that slightly move him off of his spot. He cannot do play action stretch concepts. He cannot do rollout concepts. They don't have enough faith in him, because when you watch Kirk have to go through some of these steps in normal run plays, you see him struggle every now and again. You see that he has a little bit of an issue of getting out to the spot, and they're doing things to limit the distance, like putting him in pistol. They're still doing stuff out of under center, but doing out of under center is a longer drop. It makes it even tougher for him at this point. And so it's clear that they haven't been calling play action because it does not work for Kirk right now, not at this stage in his career. I'm sure they've seen it in practice, and that's why we haven't seen them call it. And he's just not doing a good job. His footwork is sloppy. He takes a ton of false steps, especially when he's in pistol. And you're losing a ton of opportunities because of this mobility. And the play that I think of is the end zone target to Pitts, where for some reason the announcers are like, Pitts just jogs on this play. When you go back and look at that play, first of all, it's like a deep mesh concept. Pitts adjusts his route so that he does not collide with the defenders and get what would have probably been a OPI. He just flattens it a little, but he's not jogging through the route. He has to adjust his route. And Kirk throws a completely off-target ball. Like that ball has no chance. To Kirk's right, there's nothing but green grass. He has the ability to just easily work that way, and London is peeling open, and it would have been an easy touchdown. But we don't have a quarterback that can make those types of plays. He doesn't have the confidence, and his pocket awareness is pretty much gone. He does not even try to facilitate the pocket or move through the pocket and facilitate the ball across the entire field. He's pretty much just looking at half the field. We saw them call some split field passing concepts, which is you just have routes on one side of the field, and that's likely because that's all Kirk's been reading. Those were kind of a dud. He did miss London on an open one-on-one opportunity there. He missed London like twice on some one-on-one passes yesterday. So, even when he is able to get a good look, he can't cash it. And it's just starting to become a very frustrating theme, because you're seeing things that should be able to be done by a average quarterback. Nothing that we're asking of Kirk is something that Herbert can do, because if you want to talk about a quarterback making some insane throws, half of those completions to McConkey were with like somebody in Herbert's face. And it's like you said, he has the arm strength to rip that thing in there, and the defender might get a fingertip on it if he's lucky. And like that's the difference between tier 1 and tier 3 and tier 4. And so far we're not. We have not gotten play like that from Cousins all year, outside of maybe that one FU ball to Darnell Mooney against Tampa on the overtime night. And the reason I think that ball was like a dart is because Kirk didn't have to aim. He just ripped it to the top shelf the best that he could. And if he's not playing a defense that, to your point, is bad or or even just like not average, he struggles, and it's been a consistent theme all year.
Yeah, it is. And it's really disappointing because we saw flashes, I think, in the middle part of the season that looked like Kirk was kind of turning a corner. He looked like he was playing with some more confidence. It looked like the Falcons had found a way to sort of emphasize his strengths while mitigating the weaknesses. And I think Zach Robinson was basically doing everything he could to build something around Kirk Cousins that he could operate. But there's limitations to that. And I think that's been this team's Achilles heel, is that you have to call a very specific offense for Kirk Cousins at this stage, and it can't really include play action because he's not capable of running it from an athletic standpoint. It can't really include too much deep stuff because, again, he has trouble hitting it. And now we're starting to see, like, now we have to start calling half-field reads for him. Like, what is he, a group of 5 quarterback coming into the NFL, making his first starts? That sounds like Desmond Ridder.
Yeah.
And like, not trying to throw strays at Desmond Ridder. The man's been through enough, okay? Like, but it's like, this is the type of offense we were calling for Desmond Ridder. And this offense, honestly, is starting to look, it's better schemed, I think, especially passing concepts wise. But how it looks on the field in terms of production, there's more passing yards because Kirk is hitting some more of these throws, I guess. I don't even know if it's really on him, though. I think the talent is just that much better. Like, I mean, adding 2 competent receivers to complement Drake London and Darnell Mooney and Rager McLeod is probably the difference there. It's like, this is an offense that is starting to resemble more and more the 2023 Falcons, where there's just no trust in the quarterback, and the quarterback's inability to execute anything is now making them rely even more on the run. But teams know they don't have to respect the pass anymore, so they just sell out to stop it, which is what the Chargers started to do late in the game.
Yeah.
And this is not a team that's necessarily built to just run the ball down your throat. Like that, they don't have a fullback. They can't really commit to that heavy personnel. They don't seem to be willing to play Charlie Werner and Kyle Pitts at the same time. So you can only ever play one run blocking tight end, Ross Dwelly. I don't know why he's even on the roster. It's just, this offense has become the 2023 Falcons, and that you're trying to hide your quarterback. And the 2023 Falcons offense, that's the best they could do, right? It was a big mistake to go into the year with those quarterbacks as your options and nothing else. The difference with this team is that you do have another option, and you spent a top 10 pick to acquire that option. And like this, if this wasn't part of the reason that Michael Penix was brought in to be insurance for Kirk Cousins coming off a major injury and reaching that age where Matt Ryan also fell off a cliff physically. Now, at least Matt Ryan was still making good decisions with the football, but like, and I would never slander Matt Ryan. That's not where I'm going with this. But Michael Penix Jr. is here.
Yeah.
Michael Penix Jr. is the future. And this is, we're getting to the point now where, why are we bending over backwards to build an offense for Kirk Cousins when he's not giving you even average level play at this point?
Yeah. And we're not like dismissing like the growing pains and things that we're seeing from Z-Rob. Like those jet sweeps, yeah, man, those got to go in the garbage can. Those
got to beat the Big 12 out of them,
Those were bad calls.
Yeah.
There's no other way around it. But like, Kirk is breaking this man's balls out here. Like, what are you supposed to do when you have 350 yards to the Chargers 187, 24 first downs to the Chargers 10? You had the ball for 35 minutes and 55 seconds. They had it for 24 minutes and 5 seconds. The Atlanta Falcons, had a higher success rate in every single offensive category besides laid down rushes. By every statistical metric, advanced, what have you, they owned the Chargers yesterday. And like Z-Rob called a great game.
This
for
is
that
the number
defense.
one scoring defense. This is the number one scoring defense in the NFL.
Yeah, like that's one of like I feel like people have like we're overlooking how well they move the ball against this team and how many opportunities they squandered to put up points. And like you can't scheme around 4 interceptions. You can't scheme around missed touchdowns. And like there's no perfect pass play to call when Kirk's throwing interceptions between the hashes. He's throwing interceptions outside the left hash. He's throwing interceptions outside the right hash. There's no way to protect him or hide him. He has to be able to make the right decision, and he's not. And it's getting frustrating because we are seeing the OC's development now getting hindered from the quarterback. Like we talk about Penix and wanting to see him develop and all these other players. Well, the same thing is needing to happen for Zach Robinson. We don't want to see Zach Robinson falling into bad habits, trying to have to come away and figure out like what am I supposed to do as an OC when I'm given this quarterback. And let's make one thing clear. Zach Robinson loves Michael Penix. Zach Robinson's one of the big reasons we took Michael Penix. His sign-off has been documented as one of the things that gave this franchise confidence in taking him. And Penix can do everything that they're asking Kirk to do and more right now from just a fundamental standpoint. And I'm talking about just going through his steps out of pistol, making the reads. This is an offense that Penix would be very comfortable in. And Kirk is just flat out not. It seems like there's really only so much that they can do to get him feeling better. And I do think that we need to see an increase in personnel groups. McVay's not here anymore. We can do more than 11 or not anymore. McVay's not here at all. It never was, never has been. We can do more than 11 personnel. You can run 12 personnel. You can have Charlie Warner and Kyle Pitts on the field at the same time. You can do a lot of different things besides just 11. And we saw the Falcons get a little creative with pistol looks. We saw the tight end used almost as like a pseudo fullback. We saw some 21 looks with Bijan and Algier in the backfield at the same time, but it doesn't really ever like at that point in the game when they started doing it, the Chargers are selling out for the run, and it's just run blitzing. And so even if you do start making some little tweaks, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it came down to if your quarterback can make a completion, and Kirk Cousins was unable to make those completions.
Yeah. It was just you can get away with like there's certain things that you can get away with. Like a lack of arm strength can be schemed around. You know, you can find ways to emphasize sort of the easy throws or the layered throws over the middle or things like that, where you don't need to try to push things down the sidelines or anything crazy. You can find ways to scheme around a lack of arm strength. You can't scheme around bad decision making. Now you could try to help as much as possible by giving guys simplified reads. And, you know, I think like Kevin O'Connell with the Vikings is probably a perfect example of this, like basically giving Sam Darnold the most easy, like one read type offense imaginable. And as long as that read's open, which, you know, it's Justin Jefferson most of the time, so it's probably going to be open, then it works great. It also, we've seen Sam Darnold struggle when he has to go to his other options. And that's just kind of, you know, it's just kind of what you have to deal with a quarterback with limitations. But you can't survive a quarterback who makes bad decisions. And Kirk Cousins, since the Saints game, has just started this cavalcade of bad decisions on top of bad decisions. And the biggest red flag of all of this is not like Kirk having these bad throws or having a 4 interception game in a vacuum, right? Like, quarterbacks have bad games. We saw Matt Ryan throw 5 picks in a game and win, you know? And like honestly, if Drake doesn't drop that ball, there's a chance the Falcons still win this game, which probably for the best that they didn't, because then a lot of people would just be waving away this game and being like, oh well, look, Kirk won us another game at the end. It's fine. This is just the way this team is. Yeah, no, like that is not like that wouldn't erase anything. It sucks that Drake dropped it. Obviously, a win is always better than a loss. I'm not suggesting otherwise, but it. I don't think you can succeed in the NFL making decisions like this. And the biggest red flag to me is they had 2 weeks to prepare for these Chargers. Kirk had an opportunity to sort of reset, get rested up, get rehabbed, whatever he needed to do to find, his center and get ready to go for the final 6-game stretch that was going to be critical as to whether this team made the playoffs or not. And then he comes out and has the worst game of the season, maybe his career. That to me is the biggest red flag, and the reason why I don't really have any faith that this is going to improve, because you're not going to get a better chance to reset yourself mentally, physically, to try to make a drastic change to get things back on track. You're not going to get a better opportunity than you just got. And the fact that you came out of that and posted not only not a good game or an improved game, the worst game by far that we've seen from Kirk Cousins, that to me is that's a nail in the coffin. Like, I don't believe we're going to see any improvements from Kirk, because it's just going to get more and more pressured now. And when he gets under the pressure here, which it seems like he's been pressing more and more each of these last 3 games, and it culminated this week. Like, I don't really see, like, what's the path for him to get out of this rut at this stage, that he took 2 weeks off and then got worse.
Yeah. Well, nobody should be going to see Wicked. I can tell you that right now. That's probably Kirk Cousins.
That's probably what it was.
The worst promotions you could give for that movie. No Falcons player should be allowed to go see that movie.
Yes. And clearly Saint subliminal messages contained within.
Yeah. I mean, geez. And to your point, Kevin, why should we have faith in Kirk Cousins? And like, this is like the stat to look at. Greg Allman, who covers the Buccaneers, posted this last night, and some fan had said that they wish that Cousins would play like this when he plays the Buccaneers. Cousins versus the Buccaneers, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception. Cousins in every other game, 9 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Kirk Cousins has been propped up by 2 good games this year. He's had flashes in other games, like the final drive against the Eagles and some other moments in like a couple of the wins, but he's really being carried statistically by his 2 Bucs performances. He's been a below average QB in almost every other game. And like, that's the reality of what's going on at this point. And I think that's why it's like, fair for you to say that there's really nothing. Tampa's not on the schedule for the rest of the year, unfortunately. There's really no reason for people to have to trick themselves or convince themselves that Cousins has shown them something else throughout this year, because he hasn't. And I think it's just getting to the point now to where you're wanting to validate your priors. You're wanting to validate that this was going to work out. Kirk was the best available option. The contract made sense. All of this made sense. Everything like that. There's a reason Minnesota didn't commit to the man. There's a reason he's here. And it's because the physical limitations, starting to age, being washed, these were concerns that were legitimate. And the Vikings decided that they wanted to just go the rookie QB route, cheap vet route, instead of going the rookie QB route, expensive vet route, because the Vikings are still probably drafting JJ McCarthy if they bring Kirk back. So you just have to chalk it up to what it is. And it's a move that didn't work out, but you drafted somebody in case this happened, or so we were told. That Penix is here. They feel confident about him. He's looked good. you have to consider playing him at some point if this is a performance-based league, or I should say a performance-based team. And that's something that you and I have talked about extensively, is that what are they most concerned with this year? Is it making the initial plan work, or is it just like doing whatever it takes to win? And it looks like the focus is on making the initial plan work.
Yeah, and that's bad management. Like, again, and this is, I think, the trap that a lot of coaches and managers and personnel people fall into, which is that they think they'll look foolish, I think, if they change like drastically, when the correct answer is always win football games. Fans will forgive a lot of problems if you just win football games. Thomas Dimitroff is the perfect example of this. Bad draft after bad draft after bad draft, but they were winning games for a long time. It didn't really catch up to them for a while, but like, he avoided criticism because they would hit on their first rounder most of the time, and they would hit on a couple other things, and Matt Ryan and Julio Jones would carry them. And they were winning games, so it doesn't really matter that the process wasn't really great and that there was a lot of issues with these draft classes, you know, in terms of the depth and all this stuff. They were able to overcome it and win games. Fans care about winning football games. That's all fans care about. You know, we can get on here and, prognosticate about whether something was a good value or whether you made the right decision and all that, because it's interesting to talk about. But ultimately, neither one of us is going to get pissed off if they're winning football games, because look, if you win games, it cures all ills. Winning is king. And, for the record, I don't envy the situation that Raheem Morris finds himself in here. Like, you went out, swung big on quarterback in Kirk Cousins, and pretty quickly it's starting to look like that was a mistake. Like, you gave a big contract to a guy coming off a season-ending injury. There's no way that this particular scenario that's playing out right now didn't cross their minds, unless they're total fools, which I really don't think they are. I know some fans think they are. I don't think they're that foolish. I actually think these guys are pretty smart. But there's a lot that goes into it, and you mentioned it, like wanting to be right and wanting to make sure you don't bail too quickly on your plan. There's a lot of nuance to that decision, right? Like, it's, when do you pull the plug? When is too early? When is too late? And I think a lot of fans are coming at this situation acting like it's week 7 or something like that. Like, oh, we haven't seen enough yet. We need to give it more time. It's not week 7. It's week 14 now. And there's only 5 games left. And you had a 3-game lead in the NFC South that you have blown in 3 games. 3 games later, you've already blown your lead. And Tampa Bay is now tied with you and is likely to overtake you next week when you probably get your ass kicked by the Vikings, which they're going to get their ass kicked by the Vikings. I'm pretty certain of that. Now, the last time I was certain about them losing, they actually won. So, and maybe something, maybe they'll pull off a miracle or something like that. But we know Kirk is going to start this Vikings game. I wouldn't expect anything else, honestly. Yeah. But if this is the same product, I mean, even if it's a little bit better, if Kirk mostly looks like he's looked this year against good defenses, which is to say really bad, I think this is the time for us to learn what kind of coach Raheem Morris is and what this staff is. Are they the coaching staff that's actually willing to do what it takes to win? And that includes throwing a relationship with Kirk Cousins in the trash. Now, I think a reasonable person could say, like, well, he should know that he's playing absolutely terrible football to the point where he's literally not playable anymore, and he should probably not get too mad about that, but that's not how these guys operate, and I understand that. But like, if the Falcons lose to the Vikings and Kirk Cousins is a significant factor in that loss, I guess is probably the way I'll couch it. The decision time is now. It's either bench Kirk or don't. And I think a certain type of staff would know that there's only one way to make the playoffs and win, and that is to do the aggressive thing and try something different. And I think there's another type of coaching staff that would just stick with the veteran and hope that by some miracle, Tampa Bay loses a couple more games and you can sneak in by winning the easy games left on your schedule against the bad defense, which are the only teams that Kirk Cousins can put up any sort of production against, and that you can sneak into the playoffs at like 9-8, and that's your hope. But like, even if you do that, what are you really accomplishing? Like, that's the thing too. But what do you think about? I mean, what do you think about all that I said? I went too far. I was gonna make like one of those 3 points, but yeah.
I think you're right. I think it's a tough decision, but that's why these guys are paid what they're paid. These are the decisions that they need to be able to make. And I always think about situations where coaches are lucky that decisions were forced for them. And one I think about is the Ravens and Harbaugh. Lamar Jackson saves that season for the Ravens after Joe Flacco gets hurt with a hip injury. He comes in 6-1. They go to the playoffs. He's the future of the franchise. Justin Herbert, after Dr. Nick administers some medical help to Tyrod Taylor, is able to get in the game, never looks back. So you, of course, can cherry pick any moment where it worked, where it didn't. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, is the floor of Michael Penix worse than the floor of Kirk Cousins right now? And if the answer is no, and then you have to ask yourself, is the ceiling of Michael Penix higher than Kirk Cousins? That answer is yes. They drafted him 8. They definitely believe that he is better than Kirk. They may not say it right now, and they're going to say he needs to develop, but they believe he's better than Kirk. So you're saying they have the same floor, one has a better ceiling. It's time. It's time to get it going. Sorry, it didn't work out. It's an unfortunate part of the business. It is a risk that this team took. Getting to 6 wins, getting to 5, being at 500 at week 13 is nothing to rest your hat on. And I thought it was very unfortunate that Morris took that route, because this is the 3rd loss in a row where your quarterback doesn't have any impact play on the game, doesn't score points or anything. And so you can't just look. I mean, imagine being Bijan and hearing that Kirk's carried the offense all year. I just like, it's just one of those. It's why you can't say things like that, because now you're in this game, and now you're picking and choosing when you want to say something mean and something nice, and you just have to be real. And he should have just came out and said, yeah, the play from the quarterback was not good enough. Kirk's our quarterback right now. That's all you have to say. You don't have to do coach speak every single time something bad happens. And that's like something that killed a lot of fans during the DQ years. And it's something that like is going to catch up to Morris, because it's about who's performing best and who's giving you the best chance to win. And Kirk right now is not giving the Falcons a good chance to win. And that's just the truth. Bottom line.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. Like, this is, and I said this in our Falcon group chat. It's like, these are the tough decisions that define careers and seasons, right? Like, these are the decisions that define you. And I think history shows that the coaches that were willing to make the bold choice usually end up making the right choice. It doesn't always work, but there are more reasons to switch to Michael Penix than just to try to make the playoffs this year. We all know Michael Penix is the future of this team. We don't know if he's good yet. I think everything we've seen so far suggests he's a functional quarterback. Like, nothing we've seen from his handful of drives shows that he looked overwhelmed or unable to run this offense. In fact, I think he was like a couple of inches and a couple more reps in practice from connecting on like 2 or 3 fabulous deep shots. And that wasn't including the starters. So give him Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and Kyle Pitts. Let the man cook. I mean, I think the ceiling is obviously higher. The ceiling was higher the moment he was drafted. That's the entire reason he was drafted. If they didn't think he had as high of a ceiling as Kirk Cousins, why the hell do you draft him? 36-year-old Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix was drafted because they thought he has an elite ceiling, which he absolutely does. the question was like, well, Penix with like no NFL preparation versus Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins definitely has the higher floor, absolutely. And I think that was the logical read of the situation going into the season. That has waned more and more as we've gotten later because there were a couple things you could have assumed about Kirk Cousins. One of the biggest ones was that you think he's not going to kill you with turnovers. That's a problem for a lot of rookie quarterbacks, especially guys who have great arms and are used to slinging that thing because in college, they could just sling it and didn't have to worry about the defense. They just knew they could beat the defense with their arm most of the time. In the NFL, those windows shrink, the defense gets a lot better, and they will more actively bait you into mistakes that college defenses just aren't capable of doing, even the best ones. So I think it was reasonable to think Kirk Cousins is not going to kill us with turnovers. That is absolutely not the case. Kirk Cousins has killed the Falcons with turnovers. Even in their wins, he's been turning the ball over. And it's not just the picks either. He fumbles almost every time he's sacked. I think it's like 75% of his sacks have resulted in a fumble. Like, he is a turnover machine. And that I think was the reason you would stick with Kirk, because he's not going to kill you with turnovers and he's going to make good decisions with the football. I think those were the two things you look at. And obviously the experience, like he's used to being in the moment and all that stuff. And we've seen some of the like in the moment play that's probably been Kirk's best attribute is under pressure in these 2-minute drills and stuff like that. He tends to play his best ball. He finally had a good deep throw in this game. The only one all game, it seemed, to Drake London at the end, which, you know, the defense made a good play. Drake couldn't quite come down with it, you know, but like that was the first good like pass he threw all day. So Kirk is no longer giving you a safe floor. He's clearly not capable of being a game manager. So at this point, I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, there's no way Penix is as good as Kirk. Did you watch Kirk play yesterday? Did you watch Kirk play on Sunday? There's no way Penix could be worse than that. Like, you're
talking about the quarterback that leads the league in turnovers.
Yeah.
Like Kirk has more interceptions than anybody in the league right now. He's got more total turnovers.
Including Geno Smith, who has way more passing attempts. Like drastically more passing attempts. So
Geno Smith has 436 passing attempts to Kirk Cousins 399, and they're separated there by one interception. And it's tough. And I think that it's just really like we've said, it's a decision that the team needs to make. And then I think something else that everybody just kind of needs to accept is like Kyle Pitts. And like we'll use this to segue into the defense and end on a high note because, man, Lake was cooking yesterday. But Kyle Pitts, people, get over it. That's really
leave this man alone.
That's really all I have to say to you at this point. Just get over it. Whatever you think or believe or whatever you anger you hold towards Kyle Pitts is ridiculously misguided at this point. Since week 8, Pitts is only on the field about half the time. So they've reduced his snaps pretty significantly after he averaged above 70%. The only time since week 8 he was back up in the 70s was against Denver when Warner was out. Kyle Pitts is not the first read in this offense. Kyle Pitts is not the second read in this offense. Kyle Pitts is the fourth read, and then on a good day, the third read in this offense. There's nothing he can do. He's not going to save Kirk. He's not going to save himself because he doesn't get opportunities to do anything. There's a zoomed in play of Pitts on the slant route that Kirk Cousins threw to him that's been circulating, and people are like, oh, is this jogging? No. When you watch the All-22, he's breaking off his route because Kirk's about to throw another pick six. And if he doesn't, he's going to get thrown directly into coverage and get one of those lovely hospital balls Kirk Cousins is known for throwing. This is a terrible throw. But Pitts is out there clearing out routes for Ray McCloud so that he can get those catches over the middle. When you go back and see that big play or the first play that Ray made on the Falcons when they're back up against their own end zone, Pitts clears it out with a corner route. Ray's able to get to the middle of the field. That's what they asked Pitts to do. That's Pitts' role in this offense. Pitts' role is to just move around, get in some good cardio. He was open on multiple plays on the pick six that Kirk Cousins throw. Pitts is open on the backside, on a backside dig route. There's just really nothing we can do for Kyle. It's unfortunate that this is the role that he has been put in. But like we said earlier, until this team decides to run something besides 11 personnel, this is what we're going to get. He and Warner's actually, jumped him in snap count. I think it was like 46-33 yesterday. Pitts can't do anything about that. He's doing what he's asked of. And we've made this point multiple times where Kyle Pitts, yes, he has put on film, like every other player has, a couple of lazy reps. I'm so sorry to break the hearts of fans, but there's not a single Falcons player on this team that's giving 100% effort every single play. Those players don't exist anywhere because they're human beings. They get tired. They phone it in every now and again. And I understand Pitts is rightfully under a microscope, but when the announcers are making terrible calls saying that he's pulling up on a route in the end zone that he didn't, that's just a bad ball, and you have other people who are just watching everything he does with a microscope, you're going to buy into the fact that this guy is just not, a guy. Even though halfway through the season, Pitts was top 3 in yards among all tight ends. He has our longest touchdown of the year. He gets open vertically, but that's not what they want to do. Kirk does not seem comfortable, does not want to look his way. So it just kind of is what it is, and we'll have to see what their plans are. But I would not be surprised if Kyle Pitts and Tyler Algier both hit the trade market this offseason, because the Falcons right now making it pretty clear that these two guys are pretty expendable to them in terms of what they want to do and who they need. And when you look at the Falcons setup right now, as we talk about this team going into the draft, they need picks. They need to get players that they can trade for, because they're going to have cap restraints this next year. You're not getting a Jesse Bates this season. You're not getting a Kirk Cousins even this season. It's going to be tough sledding. So the Pitts plan, it just is what it is. We just got to accept it at this point. But you're just only causing yourself pain and discomfort if you're looking for Kyle Pitts to have 1,000-yard season again. We got it once. That's all there's ever going to be. It's going to be one 1,000-yard season with Atlanta, and we just collectively have to move on and understand that his role within this offense is wide receiver or tight end or passing option, whatever you want to call it, number 4, number 5.
Yeah, and that's obviously hugely disappointing. I really think that we're going to watch him go somewhere else and have a great NFL career, because he'll be 25 next year when Falcons probably trade him.
He's so young.
Trade him away for a day 2 pick, and he goes on and becomes a number 1 option for some team. And just going to be so pissed off, because it's not that complicated. I think it's really not. I know it's you hear us say well, he needs to have a crafted role. A lot of players need a crafted role, or they need a coach that's willing to put them in positions to succeed. This isn't asking for that much. But again, it's the one thing is that it seemed like they might be dialing up stuff. It looks like they're giving Pitts more vertical routes. There was that one that I know you clipped off where I think that was the one they ended up going to Mooney, but not Mooney, Ray over the middle.
Yeah, where Pitts
he's
got
one-on-one
and step on his man.
Yeah, you look if Cousins just looks, he would see the key to throw that ball, which is the linebacker stumbles. You throw that 100% of the time. You see that linebacker stumble, that's a touchdown. There's nobody there. Wide open Kyle Pitts streaking down the field. The safety maybe would have a shot at tackling before the end zone. No chance in hell of getting to the ball. Like any quarterback would be looking for that stumble. Like, but Kirk doesn't look his way. He just doesn't. And when he does, he throws terrible balls. Like that
coverage on that slant route. Like, what are we doing?
That was like, you look again. It's like these are basic keys. Like you look at that linebacker. If that linebacker stays inside and doesn't rush to cover that linebacker could probably do two things. Either he runs down to cover the running back coming out of the flat, in which case you throw the slant behind him, or he's going to stay there in the middle of the field covering the slant. When they snap the ball, he stays where he is to cover the slant. He's sitting down waiting for the slant. Pitts knows this. Pitts like, I'm not just going to run full speed into this guy. That's not going to create anything. So he just kind of, takes a few steps, and then he's like, and then Kirk throws it anyway. Like it's like you missed this obvious key. Like this is the most obvious key you're gonna get. You don't even have to wait to see if a guy reacts. You just look and see where he is when the ball is snapped and see, does he take steps towards the sideline or does he stay where he is? He just stays where he is. Okay, I can't throw that. I gotta move to another read. And if he had just turned his head, there was another read. But he didn't, because that was another stat that I think we saw this week, is that Kirk targets his first read the second most of any quarterback in the NFL. And that's not, in a vacuum, targeting your first read isn't necessarily bad, like on its face, right? Because the first read is what the play's designed to hit. That usually means that the route combination is going to free up the first read by design. So of course you want to check the first read first, and you should throw to your first read most of the time because that's the one that should be getting open if you have a competently designed offense. But he's throwing to the first read at like a very ridiculous level, and like that was just another thing. Like Kyle Pitts is the perfect like complement to these weapons because he can be sent deep when a lot of tight ends aren't going to be able to. Like you can send a tight end on that, vertical route, but that, maybe you get 10, 15 yards out of it, and that's great. The difference that could make Kyle Pitts really special is Kyle Pitts can take that 10 to 15 yard gain and turn it into a house call half the time because he, unlike most tight ends, has the breakaway speed to dust safeties and linebackers. And even if he doesn't dust them, he's really hard to take down when he gets going. But the way the offense, like, and that's why to me, it's like, I wonder if this isn't an offensive design thing. It's Kirk isn't going to throw that route. He's not going to look for Pitts. So we don't really have a choice but to, like, if Kirk's not going to throw it, we need to get a player in there that he will throw. But again, it's like, if we're getting to that point, the time has come to take Kirk Cousins out of the offense. Like, we should not be, and this is more of the meta conversation before we get to the defense, because I think we should lavish praise on the defense before we get out of here, because they actually deserve some praise for once. So we gotta give them their cred. But the more like meta conversation here is that Kirk Cousins was always a maximum of 2 years in Atlanta. They should never be building a team for Kirk Cousins because Kirk Cousins is temporary. At most, he was going to be here 2 seasons. Michael Penix is the future. He's the guy you drafted in the top 10. When you had screaming needs elsewhere, you thought this guy was so important to your future that you drafted him in the top 10. Okay, you did that. You look at this team, the weapons they've constructed, the guys they have, this team looks built for Michael Penix, not Kirk Cousins. Especially given, now if Kirk Cousins' arm hadn't fallen off a cliff, this would be, I think, a team that could work for both guys. The way it stands now, it's pretty clear to me Michael Penix could get way more out of this group of weapons than Kirk Cousins can, because all these outs, all these deep shots, like, that's Penix's bread and butter. Penix throws that out route better than almost anyone. I mean, you guys have seen him throw.
Mm-hmm.
He throws rockets on those out routes. Even like Penix might have gotten away with that
on tape, like on one of the 2 throws he got.
Yeah,
in that game, but in the Saints game or whatever it was, he threw a laser on the exact same out route that Cousins just can't get it there on.
Yeah, so it's like, the stars are aligning here, and it's like I think this just ties into what we said earlier, which is that the offense looks built for Penix, except maybe like you would want a better pass protecting right tackle. Not much you could do about that right now. And to be fair, like McGarry has been like fine for the most part. Like I know like in years past he's been a huge liability. This was a big test, and I think
everyone struggled against a Bosa. Like
right, yeah. I mean, it's like like I thought he did fine against Bosa. It wasn't like he had a great game or anything, but he did enough. And Michael Penix actually can move his legs and reset his platform. And in the preseason in his one, couple drives we got to see him do that, which is he got to dodge a little pressure, reset his feet, and rifle a ball in for a big gain, because that's the play you expect an NFL quarterback to make. Kirk can't do that. So at this point, it's just like, I don't know what else we need to see. I think like fans are taking this like Kirk Cousins should get the rest of the season. Why? Because you paid him a lot of money for 2 years? Like, the money's gone. Whether you play Cousins or not, the money's gone. That's called sunk cost fallacy. This is something that all people do. This is a very common fallacy, logical fallacy that people engage in, which is like, well, I've done all this. I can't stop now, because they're like, well, I've put this work in, so I can't. If I stop, then I lose all this. You've already lost that. Regardless of whether you keep going or not, that work is gone. That money, your money is gone. Like, you paid Kirk. That ship has sailed. It's gone. You putting in Penix doesn't make the Kirk Cousins move any worse than if you kept Cousins in. It just might save your season if you put Penix in. Maybe it won't. There's definitely a chance that Penix struggles in his first games as an NFL starter, even if you do put him in against some of these easier guys. And like, the Giants just lost Dexter Lawrence for most of the season. He just went on IR. So, that was one of your only tough opponents left in terms of defensive lines, and they just lost the best defensive lineman they had for the Falcons game. Like, there's a great opportunity to let Kirk get smashed by the Vikings, and that should tell you everything you need to know that this guy's not capable of being an NFL starter anymore. And then you can just calmly insert Michael Penix for the Raiders Giants stretch of games. And even like the Commanders, like that defense is not formidable. Like, that's not exactly the toughest test for Penix either. Like, if you put Penix in, which is a great meme, by the way, like, he has a soft finish here. Like, you can let him go up against these 4 soft defenses to close out the year. Give him this is significant, important experience. You can give him an opportunity where it's like simultaneously high pressure, but also kind of not, because it's like, we weren't making the playoffs anyway with Kirk. So like, we don't really have a downside to going to Penix here, because our only hope is to basically win out in these 4 games, and Kirk wasn't going to win out. I think we can all know that probably. If this failure against the Vikings comes to pass, I think we all know. But like, Penix also has the opportunity to go on a run, to get 4 games in a like gotta have it situation. That's valuable experience. And if he doesn't get there, so what? It's his first 4 games as a rookie. You're getting him valuable reps. That's good no matter what. Like, getting him those reps, giving him that opportunity, that's great. And then if you do make the playoffs, you get to get him playoff reps as a rookie. Like, that's the best case scenario, where you get to get your rookie quarterback into a playoff game and give him reps as an NFL starter. Like, that's the upside of going with Penix. The upside of sticking with Kirk is like, maybe he puts it together and can finish strong against 4 bad defenses. But like, you're not like, are you really, even if he finishes strong against 4 bad defenses, are you really confident in starting Kirk in 2025? Like, what does that get you other than maybe sneaking into the playoffs? And, long term, it doesn't really get you anything. Like, there's no upside to that move other than maybe sneaking into the playoffs. But we know the second Kirk comes up against a defense worth its salt, he's going to crumble. We don't know what will happen with Penix coming up against that defense. Maybe he will crumble. He is a rookie after all. But I think long term, there's there's an incentive to play Penix. Like there is upside to that. Even if you don't make the playoffs, there's still upside to giving Penix the opportunity.
Yeah. And, just so you know, as we're saying this, there are people out there talking about Kirk Cousins throwing, interceptions, and how 11 of his 13 have come from the pistol. And we've talked about how the pistol's actually been implemented to help Kirk Cousins, limit the footwork and everything like that. But very interesting commentary from Michael the Burner Turner, responding to somebody talking about Kirk not being comfortable, and the burner says BS. He was comfortable with it when he threw for a franchise record 509 yards in only his 5th game as a Falcon. So we're not the only ones seeing that there is an execution problem happening from the quarterback, and it just kind of goes right in with what you're saying, in that you can't just excuse all of these things. You can't just wash it off and discount the impact that you would get from playing Penix now and getting him those reps, because especially when we're spoiling opportunities like the one we got from the defense yesterday. So let's just talk about that. The Falcons defense pressured Justin Herbert 12 times, sacked him 5 times, hit him 8 times. They were a problem from the first quarter to the fourth quarter. It was a game that we haven't seen from them, and that frankly neither of us thought was possible. We didn't think that the Falcons would be able to have a game like that against an offense this year, especially not like somebody I consider top 5 quarterback in this league. That was one of the best quarterbacks you've played this entire year. The one thing that Ryan Nielsen's defense did do badly was rise to the occasion when they had to face a quarterback like that last year. And the Jimmy Lake defense was phenomenal. We saw guys dropping into coverage. We saw AK and Charles Harris drop into coverage on the first Caden Ellis sack. But guess what? Lake muddied the picture enough, and his designs were so much more crisp, and the execution was so much more crisp. He made it a point to attack the interior of the Chargers pass rush, which was the issue. And you see Ellis split a double between the guard and the running back, and then Grady Jarrett's over here throwing Joe Alt by the wayside like the new kid on the block that he is. And we saw it consistently throughout the day. Effort was there. There's a play where Judon, he's in coverage and he sprints at Herbert. It's probably a good 8 yards. I don't know. Judon could sprint for a full 8 yards, gets a hit on Herbert and causes him to have an errant throw. AK showing up, being the edge one that we are all wanting him to be. Multiple pressures throughout the game. His first sack against Joe Alt is one of the best spin moves you'll see this year. He generates so much force with his spin that Alt literally falls back off of his feet and almost to the ground. And AK, like a shark smelling blood in the water, closes the space and just slams Herbert. His next sack, even more impressive because he comes from across the field and hawks him down after Herbert tries to take off the complete opposite direction. And so you're getting performances from Lake and the pass rush, and even the secondary looked much better. Sure, we still saw the issues with the linebackers and coverage. It doesn't matter when you stop the run. It doesn't matter when you get to the quarterback. And that's some of the things we've talked about this year. And so we really wasted what was a phenomenal performance from Jimmy Lake in this defense. And you cannot, especially this team, when the margins for error on that side of the ball have been so small, you cannot waste those opportunities. And it's crazy that this was a 4-point game on the final drive, that this was still just 17-13, and the Falcons had every opportunity to get the ball in the end zone, but they just couldn't do it. And it falls at the feet of the quarterback.
Yeah. It's sad, and it was a good performance. We saw some of the stuff we'd asked for, more 5-man pressures, or at least 5-man pressure looks that become 4-man pressures with the simulations. And we've seen the corners still played off most of the time, but they weren't as far off. They were like 5 yards off instead of 8 to 10 yards off. That's all I was asking, just like an opportunity. And we saw that pay dividends on the screens that the Chargers tried to run, where the Falcons actually had an opportunity to make a play. AJ Terrell in particular. Yeah. Yes. Like he actually got to. Whoa. And like, honestly, on a lot of those Ladd McConkey throws, like the Falcons had good coverage. Herbert just rifled that in there, and they just didn't like. I mean, it was just a great throw. Like a lot of those completions you'll see, like he's got the corner draped on him. It's just a great throw, and that's gonna happen sometimes. I mean, but like before, it was like they wouldn't even get there before the pass was caught. This time, it's like guys are draped off the receivers. It's like, yes, that's what it should look like. These guys should be in position. So, the defense stepped up, and we'll see if this is something that's sustainable. I don't think they're getting 5 sacks a game or anything like that. But this Chargers offensive line, like, they've, especially at tackle, been very good. And for the Falcons to have so much success there, that is a big, it's big. The Falcons actually have a chance to get more than 20 sacks this year now. Before this game, I would have bet on the Falcons finishing with fewer than 20 sacks. Now they're at 16 going into week 14. They do actually have a chance to get above 20. So we'll see. If they could just get 5 sacks a game the rest of the way, they'll actually finish with a respectable sack total, but probably not. Yeah, probably not. But the defense deserves so much credit. And
it was impressive.
Again, like a lot of people are calling out Raheem and the coaching staff, and like Raheem gave a terrible press conference after this game. Like, don't get me wrong. Like one of the first things he said was like, this wasn't as bad as the Denver loss. It's like, never, ever, ever start comparing losses.
Don't play that game.
That is never going to go well. And it just pisses people off, and myself included. Like, a loss is a loss. I would argue this one's worse because you squandered a great game from your defense. I guess the Broncos, the whole team just died. Like they were just like, we're done.
But then it's like you had 9 injuries. You had all the other stuff going on. Like you were on the road. You just got your butt handed to you the week before. It's like you're saying, like, why are we comparing these games?
Yeah. So can't say that. And also, the talk about, obviously he's going to stick with Cousins. I don't think anyone was really suspecting a change after this game. But, so that's not surprising. But just, the shtick is kind of wearing thin there. And, that is, I think, definitely caused people to be very anti-Raheem Morris. But I think you look at how the rest of this team played, not including Kirk Cousins, I think it's clear the whole team came out of the bye energized. They were focused. Again, the penalties were not an issue. That was a big problem going into this game. They clearly focused up, defense in particular, but the offense, like the execution level for everyone but Kirk Cousins was high. There weren't a lot, except Ray McLeod run blocking. That execution level there was lacking, but they shouldn't be asking him to do that. That you could blame the coaches for that. But the whole team responded really well and played winning football except Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins played so goddamn bad that he literally tanked the team. Like, all the stats you cite makes it clear this is not a Zach Robinson problem. The offense was very functional. Kirk Cousins threw 4 picks, fumbled, and even when he was completing passes, he was requiring his receivers to make crazy catches.
There were
so many bad throws. Like, so to see the entire team come out and play like that makes me think this isn't a coaching issue. Like, I know a lot of people are upset, and rightfully so, about the Falcons blowing a 3-game division lead. That is upsetting. The biggest issue, I think, obviously this week the biggest issue was Kirk, but like Kirk's been an issue the last 3 games. It just came to a head this week, and it was like, oh my, this was really Kirk's fault. And it's so disappointing considering that it seems like the coaching staff really got buy-in from pretty much everyone. Special teams. Koo had that bad miss. That was a weird kick. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that kick. I don't know what happened to it. It just hooked at the very, like, that kick was good the whole way until like the last second. I don't know what happened. That was a weird one.
Yeah. They, just going off of the injury being a hip injury. It looks like he's just uncomfortable closing his hips, which leads to that like drift. And you saw the second kick that he did make, it even started to spiral off towards the right, towards the end. And yeah, it's just unfortunate. I don't really know what they're going to do with Koo at this point, but the future is definitely in doubt beyond this year.
Yeah. They've got Riley Patterson in the building. So, yeah. But yeah, I know folks are like, the Falcons are all behind Kirk Cousins. They'll be behind Kirk Cousins until he's not the starter. That like this is a sign. Like this is a good locker room still. Like no one's gonna call out Kirk Cousins publicly. That's just this team is not. They don't do that, and they shouldn't. That doesn't help anything. Like the players privately probably have their thoughts, but they're not going to share them with the media. So
would
don't
love to be in a Michael Penix group chat if anybody is willing to throw me a bone.
Yeah, anybody who want to reach out, some anonymous quotes for that. But ultimately, like the team is going to be behind Kirk Cousins until they pull the plug. Until the minute they pull the plug, they will give like. I feel like this week was the dreaded vote of confidence. Like I like we haven't heard the words vote of confidence yet, but it feels like this is the vote of confidence week. And the vote of confidence week almost always precedes the benching week. If the player that's receiving the vote of confidence doesn't perform, and this is a bad setup for Kirk to perform because he's got to go to Minnesota to play Brian Flores, who's probably got the defense best suited to make his life absolute hell. And the Falcons don't really have any more time to mess around either. Like Kirk fumbles this game, they've only got 4 games, and they're probably going to have to win them all. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I just hope that this coaching staff sits down and thinks about more than just trying to sneak into the playoffs. Like as much as we're all starving for a playoff run, we need to think about more than just what's the safest way I can sneak into the playoffs versus what's the actual path to this team having the most success long term, which I think is getting Penix on the field. Because I think this 3-game stretch, like even if Kirk ends the skid and starts playing like more like what we've come to expect this year, relatively, up and down football, I still don't think you should be going to Kirk Cousins in 2025. I think the physical decline is not going to improve. It's only going to get worse, especially at this age. It can get worse quick. So,
And you can make the argument that the answer to both of those questions you posed are Penix. Even if you're trying at this point, if you're trying to squeak into the play, what would have more impact on the fan base? Squeaking in the playoffs as it stands with Kirk, or squeaking in with Penix coming in?
Right.
What's going to make people feel a little bit better about squeaking into this playoffs?
Yeah.
It's definitely not going to be a quarterback you hope is not here next year doing it, because then you're just going to be upset and, so on and so forth. And like you said, this team has been all about the future. Like that's, they're all about making moves for the future. And so you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone right now and get the ball moving on both of those goals and objectives. But anyways, to cut this all short, they need to start considering playing Penix as soon as tomorrow. And if they're going to do the whole we're going to give Kirk the Vikings game thing, then I think you have to post game, whatever happens, you have to act on it. You can't wipe it away again. You can't, do, soft play it. Well, we don't really just want to give up. There's 4 games left. What if? It's all based on who's giving you the best option to win.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we've discussed it at length that there are compelling reasons that you should lean towards Penix. Like if it's close in your mind, you should lean towards Penix because Penix is the future. Penix, like the grass is not always greener, for the record. We saw that with Taylor Heinicke. Okay. Like we just lived through this, but Taylor Heinicke wasn't the future. Taylor Heinicke was maybe you can go to this guy. Maybe he gets you a little bit of a spark to finish the season, whatever. Michael Penix is a top 10 pick rookie. All the other rookie quarterbacks in that range are playing. They're all playing pretty well. Like, these guys are all playing pretty well, including guys that were drafted behind Michael Penix. I don't think there's any reason to suspect that Penix will be a disaster or anything like that. And clearly, like, if the Falcons can play like they did against the Chargers, you don't need Penix to play great to win. You just need him to not throw 4 picks. Like, you just need him to not throw 4 picks. Like,
yeah, and it's also like you can't worry about what could happen with Penix. You just have to focus on what's happening right now with Kirk.
We know what we have is bad. You know, it's like that Family Guy meme, right? It's like, in this box, you know, like, we could have a boat, or we could have the mystery box. It could even be a boat, you know, but it's like in reverse. Like, Penix is the mystery box, but like we could have like a pile of garbage, or we could have this box. I guess it could be a pile of garbage, but it could also not be a pile of garbage. And, you know, right now I would take the chance of it not being a pile of garbage versus a pile of garbage. And, you know, a pile of garbage in the hand is worth, you know, however many piles of garbage in the bush. This is a moment for bold action to save the season. They're not going to do it before this Vikings game. I think that's clear. But after the Vikings game, if Kirk has a similar performance to what we've seen the last 3 weeks, if he doesn't throw a touchdown, for example, right, and turns the ball over more, they have to make a change. Like, if you don't, I think that you're just not. I don't think you've got the stones to make it in this league. Like, this league requires bold action sometimes. And also it requires temperance, right? You can't just throw someone out after a game either. Like, there is a nuance to it, but we're past nuance at this point. Like, this is week 14 now we're talking about. Like, I think so many fans seem to be treating this like we're like a couple games in and we just got to give Kirk time. Like, no, we've got 5 games left, and we'll have 4 games left after this Vikings game. So if Kirk doesn't really show us something against the Vikings, I think they have to make a change. And if they don't, I think they're more or less conceding the season.
I agree.
And even if it does work out and Kirk plays well enough in these final 4 games against bad defenses to get you to the playoffs, it's like, it could have been better with Penix. Like, even if Kirk plays okay, like, Penix could be better than okay. And I think there's reason to believe that we should expect him to be at least okay. So, you know, it's a tough spot. I don't envy the coaching staff in this situation. Like, this is a difficult situation from a team standpoint, from a, you know, personalities standpoint, like business side. Like, all these things are kind of coming to a head here, and this is a very gnarly situation. But these are the decisions that define your career. And Raheem Morris, in his second stint as a head coach, like, this could be a career-defining decision for him. Do you take the conservative route and stick with an underperforming veteran in the hopes that maybe he gets it together enough for you to make the playoffs and probably just get waxed in the first round? Or do you try to make a bold move to go to your rookie that you apparently loved enough to take in the top 10, who's now had, you know, 14 weeks of absorbing the offense and, you know, not necessarily getting the practice reps, but at least getting to absorb and be near these guys and you know, soak up this information. It's not like you're throwing him in cold right off the street in week 1, right? This is, I think, a potentially career-defining moment for Raheem Morris and this coaching staff coming up after this Vikings game. Or maybe Kirk Cousins goes out, throws 4 touchdowns, and we just all look dumb for having this conversation. But ultimately, I don't think that's going to happen. So, yeah.
No, but unfortunately, you know, I'm right there with you. I'm hoping that this team can build on this defensive performance moving forward, because if Lake is going to be here again next year, like, we need to see more of this because, like you said, it kind of goes both ways. We can't just see one good game from Lake. Kind of need to see a couple of these, see them string together some. They're going to have opportunities, I think, against the offenses that are left. But if the job can't get done on the other side of the ball, we just have to be honest about why we made decisions that we made this offseason, like getting Penix and stuff like that. And, you know, we've talked about the fear of like being wrong about this plan with Kirk and everything, but man, like imagine you turn to Penix and then you're able to dunk on everybody who just laughed at you in April for doing so, for drafting him. And then you roll Penix out there, and sure, you're going to get people saying, like, oh, well, I mean, you didn't need to sign Kirk then and all of that. Yeah, you know what? Maybe that's true. Maybe Penix did need a little bit of extra time, and the Falcons could have just used a different veteran QB to facilitate this handoff. But if you can clown everybody for that, don't be afraid to be right either. Don't be afraid to trust your gut that you took Michael Penix and that you risked it and that you became the talk of draft night for a reason. Like, go out there and prove to people through him that, like, hey, like, don't worry, we've got this. We had this plan prepared and we were ready to roll and make this change if we needed to. So I'm just hoping that we do see them have confidence in that decision, because at this point, it is looking like that was definitely the right move. Like, there is going to be, like, the narrative has slowly shifted from why would the Falcons draft Penix at 8 to why would the Falcons have signed Kirk? That was not like really the whole initial thing. The initial thing was, you don't need Kirk. He's going to be there for 3 years minimum. It is not looking like that anymore.
Yep. Yeah, you could with one fell swoop quiet all the doubters about the Penix picks. So it's like, I know people are like, oh, well, they don't want to make themselves look stupid for signing Kirk. Well, it's like, well, you could just make yourself look like a genius for drafting Penix at the same time. So, like, whether or not, like, if Kirk is bad, it's going to be a bad signing. So you can either sit there, you know, gnashing your teeth about it and trying to justify a bad signing, or you can do what good teams do, which is say, well, we screwed up. Time to turn the page. And that's exactly what they need to do. And I think regardless of if they play Penix this season or not, we can't go into next year with Kirk as the starter. I think that the physical decline we're seeing is not going to improve.
You lock Mark Davis in a room and you get that deal done. That's what you do.
Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. If someone will take him, I'll take a 7th, man. Anything to get him off the books. But and this is not a personal thing with Cousins. Like, you know, I've enjoyed having him here. Honestly, it was really fun watching the whole Kirktober thing, and he clearly like really got into the city and the fans, and it sucks that this is happening. It's just like you got to pivot. You got to pivot. You can't get stuck on these things. You can't ruin the future of your team to try to preserve a relationship or to try to, you know, protect yourself from looking silly. Like, I think you'll look sillier if you don't make the change that you need to make. And you know, I hope that, first of all, I hope the Falcons beat the Vikings and that, you know, maybe this all won't be necessary, and we could have more of a long-term conversation about playing Penix. But in the very likely scenario that the Falcons lose to the Vikings and that the quarterback position is very culpable in that loss, the time has come that the conversation happens now. And it's not because of last week. It's because of what we've seen all season. And like you said early in the show, Kirk Cousins this year has been a below average starting quarterback on the whole. Those Bucs games were hella fun. You know, not discounting anything there, but the body of work overall is just not impressive.
Yeah, it's not, and you know, hopefully there's something that they can do to kind of get the best that they can out of him, because you know, I don't know what Kirk's future holds, but him playing well and not getting benched, regardless of whether he's here or not next year, I think is still like the most optimal like path forward in terms of, you know, what is value for a player, this, that, the other, you know, all those conversations that we don't need to or want to dive into until we get to that point. So, you know, very happy that we saw the defense perform the way they did. But it's just a real monkey's paw situation. You hope and you pray and you wish for that pass rush to come, and when it does, it's just an avalanche on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, that's rough. But I also love that you went and found the clip of that Penix out route and posted it. I was like, yep, I
Just
remember.
for
I thought I
fun.
remember just for fun,
Just a
you know,
random quarterback.
just some guy. Yeah, but guys, thank you guys for joining us here. Obviously, a lot to talk to, a longer episode, but you guys love this. You guys love these long episodes. Everybody's like, oh yeah, keep going longer. So, you know, at a certain point, you know, we'll probably try to keep these under an hour, you know, later in the season if this team disappoints us even further. But a lot to talk about, obviously, with this thing, and not a conversation you want to have, but an important one. So I'm glad we covered it in depth and also defended Pitt's honor a little bit more, just because this, like, I don't know, Pitts has been public enemy number one for too long. It's just like, yeah, like he's got some issues, but you know, there are reasons for him to be disgruntled also. Like, you know, these guys aren't statues that just are like, well, you know, the coaching staff and the quarterback clearly hate me, but I'm just going to show up to work, you know, and continue to just sacrifice my body on these pointless plays to try to impress fans, you know. So, you know, it is what it is. It's not great. Hopefully it'll be like we suggested, where maybe Pitts is being phased out of the offense, not because the staff doesn't believe in him, but because Kirk doesn't believe in him, and the staff for now has to do whatever Kirk wants, because that's the only, Kirk is the starting quarterback. I do wonder what Robinson thinks. Like, I would kill to be behind closed doors in those meetings and hear like that one-on-one, like Zach Robinson, Raheem Morris conversation. And I wonder if Zach Robinson's like, when are you going to give me Penix, man? Like, it's time. Like, I need this guy. Like, this Kirk's killing me, man. Like I got this whole stack of plays that we can't even use. Like, please, Raheem, I need this, you know. And, but that's pure, you know, we aren't there, you know. So if anyone is in that room, you know, please let us know in the comments what was being said. But yeah, no, Tre'Shon, anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No. Stick with us. We're gonna keep pouring through these games no matter what happens. So you don't have to do that yourself. And you know, again, we haven't said it this entire time, but like the playoff hopes, finishing out strong, those dreams aren't dead, but they are becoming much harder to achieve as the weeks and the days go on.
Yes, they have dwindled down to the 60% chance, I believe. So, not great. Obviously, not great at all. So, you know, this is a big opportunity this week. I hope the Falcons can find a way to miraculously beat this Vikings team. But if they can't, the only other option is to win out, more than likely. So, we'll see how that ends up going. But guys, thank you so much for joining us here on Tuesday Takes on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. Please like, subscribe if you haven't done so already. That really helps us out. Leave a comment if you got it. We'd love to hear from you. You could support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic or join up with the YouTube channel memberships. Check out the Discord server as well. Check out thefalcoholic.com for that great written content. And of course, thanks to BetOnline for sponsoring today's episode. Guys, I'm Kevin Knight. He's Tre'Shon Diaz. We will see you guys next time on Tuesday Takes. We'll also be back on Wednesday for another episode of Falcoholic Live at 8 p.m. Eastern. Until then, folks, thanks again for joining us. We will see you. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. See you next time.